All right, so today we are going to work on a foam rolling routine for our lower body, doing a lot of emphasis on our hips, front of our hips, outsides of our hips, insides of our hips, back of our hips, aka your butt, quads, hamstrings, calves, even a little bit for feet. Any kind of foam roller will work for this. I happen to have a long one. If you've got a little shorty one, that's totally fine. Generally, these smoother ones are a teeny bit more gentle and comfy. If you've got one that has a lot of nubs and ridges on it, those also work. Just be prepared, it may feel a little more intense, so feel free to go a little easy. That said, let's get started. I really like starting my lower body with my glutes because they are one of the biggest muscles, so it's nice to get them out of the way. So we're gonna start sitting our roller, butt on the roller. I'm gonna take a little lean to the right, just so that I'm putting all of my weight into my right butt cheek. Not leaning all the way to the side. Still keeping my chest pretty angled up towards the ceiling. Right leg is gonna stay totally relaxed. So I roll the roller all the way up to the back where my hip bone sticks out. So we're gonna go all the way to the top of our glutes, down the fleshy part of your butt, all the way past your sits bones on the bottom of your butt. So that little bone that sticks out at the bottom of your pelvis. We're gonna make sure we're going through the whole glute muscle and not just doing the real big fatty part right in the middle. So go ahead and make this nice and long, keeping that right leg as relaxed as you can. So you'll notice I'm not on a yoga mat and I am wearing socks. I generally find my foot kind of gets stuck on a mat because my mat is pretty sticky. I practice a lot on carpet on hardwood, so socks are great to make me a little slidey, make this a little bit easier. So make sure you're going slow. Really aim for awkwardly slow when you're foam rolling. You don't want to treat our body like pie dough. The slower you go, the more time you're giving your body to adapt. She'll be good. If you're like me and you're slowly inching toward the wall, you can always reset. So again, going from all the way at the back of our hips where they stick out on our backside, down our butt cheek, past our sits bones on the bottom. Good. And then we'll keep doing these right glutes, but we'll make it a little bit more challenging. We're gonna cross our right ankle over our left knee, like you're doing a figure 4 stretch. So we're taking a light stretch into those muscles. I wanna be pulling again so much that this is really intense. We're gonna keep rolling over those glutes. See how it feels. And our stretch, still going nice and slow. And I'm still leaning more to the right side, so it's just my right butt cheek on the roller. And rotate so that you can see what it looks like from the front. Then taking a couple breaths. And we'll do 2 more passes up and down our right glutes. And then we'll switch to our left side. So starting sitting on the roller, taking a little lean to the left, so it's all of our left butt cheek that's on the roller. Right hip is just slightly lifted. I'm gonna extend my leg long so it's nice and relaxed, and roll all the way down past the sits bones, up my booty, to where my hip bone starts coming out the back of my butt. And your arms can be doing whatever is the most comfortable support position. Got my arms kind of in this awkward tabletop. You can have your hands on either side. Totally up to you. With a lot of our leg stuff, you might have to kind of figure out what's the position that feels the most relaxing, which is a little different for everyone. A couple more passes with our relaxed leg. Then we'll take it into our figure 4. So you're gonna lift your left ankle, cross it on top of your right knee, still rolling all the way up the back side of your butt to where your hip bones start sticking out on your back, down your butt cheek, all the way past your sits bones on the very bottom. And with this one, you're welcome to lean a little bit more towards one side, more towards the middle. See if adjusting the angle, you're finding any spots that feel a little more spicy and need a little more love. Or you can keep it pretty neutral if that's feeling good. And for any of these rolling that we're doing, if you happen to find a spot that you're feeling a lot of tension, or maybe you find a little bit of scar tissue, you're welcome to just stop rolling and hold and breathe into that spot, letting gravity apply a little pressure from the roller into that pressure point. Seeing if just waiting for maybe 4 to 8 breaths is enough to let it to slowly start to release. You can come back to your moving nice and slow, and then when you're ready, back to your full muscle rolling. It's a really nice way to slowly work it out. All right, we'll do one more up and down on our left leg. And while we've got our roller under our butt, let's come down to lying on our back. This is not really a rolling exercise, but it's one of my favorite things to do while we're kind of in this shape. So the roller is going to be right under my hips, so it's under the bony part of my butt, not necessarily the squishy, meaty part of my butt. I'm going to lift my feet up towards the ceiling. Maybe you want to bend your knees in towards your chest, or if it's comfortable, you can open your knees out to the side, soles of your feet to the ceiling, just like a happy baby in yoga. You can grab your feet, or you can keep pulling on the roller if it feels like it is going to shoot out from under your butt, and take a little sway side to side. So what we're doing here is we're slowly pushing the very top of our glute muscles into the roller, right where those muscles are meeting our hip bones. And you can do this with your bent knees, taking a little twist so both of my shoulder blades are staying on the floor. Just getting a little rotation through my pelvis, like from this angle too. So you can keep it real small, just letting your knees sway a little bit side to side, either together or in your happy baby legs. Or you can make this pretty big and dramatic. You can let your knees fall all the way to this side, all the way to the other side, taking this more into a spinal twist. And it's gonna feel real nice. All of the muscles at the very top of your butt where they're connected to your low back. And then you can come back to the middle, plant your feet, remove the roller, and we'll do a little bit for the front of our hips. So we just did glutes, back of our hips. Let us say hello to our hip flexors. So our hip flexors, they typically need a lot of love if we do a lot of sitting. That means they are short and not working all day long. So we're gonna give them a little stretch out, a little rolling. So for this, we're gonna take our roller. We're gonna just roll through our hip crease. So that's gonna be from where your hip bone sticks out, the top of your hips, through your hip crease, just about mid-thigh. So it's not gonna be a huge range of motion. This is gonna be pretty small. So for this one, we'll line the edge of our roller. So I've got one hip bone that's kind of just hanging off in space. Other hip is on the roller. And you're just gonna slowly rock forwards and backwards. So let me show that one from the side. This one, it's real tempting to go fast because it's a smaller area. So it's easier to rock a little bit fast. So make sure you're going real slow. So going just upper mid-thigh area through that hip crease, all the way to the top of that hip bone that's jutting out the front of your hips. This is an area where you can experiment with the angle a little bit too. You can drop that left hip a little bit, lift your right hip, getting more of the inside edge of your hip flexors. Or you can get outside edge, starting to lift the left hip, dropping that right hip, get more of the outside edge of your hip crease. Or you can keep it neutral, thigh square to the ground. And while we're here, we're gonna start taking it down into our quad before we switch sides. So we're gonna keep going through our hip flexors, because it's nice to do those while we're here. Start sliding that roller all the way down your thigh. Stopping right before you get to your knee, and then back up, nice and slow. Through your hip crease, up to the top of your hip bone. If this feels real intense, sometimes I have very quite tight quads, and this feels real special the closer I get to my knee, you can be using your opposite side leg to take more of that body weight. And you can be on your hands, you can be on your elbows, whatever feels like a comfortable amount of support. And then we're gonna get our quad from a slightly different angle. We're gonna externally rotate our leg. So I want you to think about sticking your knees and your toes out to the side. So inside edge of your foot is on the floor, like you're kicking a soccer ball. And we're gonna roll up and down our quad a couple times, getting more of the inside edge of the front of our thigh. So it's not all inner thigh, it's still top of the thigh, but just getting it from a different angle. And then we'll do the opposite. We'll try to get the outside edge of the top of our thigh. So I'm gonna take my foot, start to rotate it so that my pinky toes are coming towards the floor, or my toes are now pointing towards the middle. So I can roll over the outside edge of the top of my thigh. Oh boy. This one's giving me some feels today. So your quads, as they're named quad, are actually 4 muscles. So these ones are very nice to do from a couple different angles because you may not have them all be equally tight. So it's nice to kind of get the outside, the middle, the inside. And you may notice there's a spot that needs a little extra love. We'll do one more pass up and down the outside of our quads. And then we'll switch legs. So starting left hip crease, we'll do a little bit for our hip flexors, then we're gonna take it down to our quads. So again, to start, I'm gonna have one hip on the roller, other hip is just dangling off in space. So I'll place my left hip down, rolling all the way up to the top of my hip bone, down through that hip crease, just to the middle or the upper part of my thigh. And I'm trying to keep that left leg nice and relaxed. This one is also helpful if your foot's gonna be slidey on the floor. Good, and just like the first side, if you wanna experiment with getting your hips at a different angle here, you can drop that outside hip so that we're getting more of the inside edge of our hip flexors here. If you are someone who has junk here that I do not have, you may want to adjust your junk before you are rolling like this. Pro tip. Should have mentioned that on the first side. Hopefully you didn't discover that yourself. And then we'll get the outside edge of our hip flexor. So I'm gonna lift that outside hip just a little bit higher. Still rolling through the front of my hip crease, but aiming more towards the outside of the front. And we'll come back to neutral, both hip bones pointing down to the floor, and we'll start taking it down into our quad. So still starting at the top of our hip, going through our hip crease, through those hip flexors, starting to go down the front of our thigh. Stopping before you get to the kneecap. We don't want to ever roll directly over our kneecap. Kind of want to avoid rolling over joints like that. Good, keeping it slow. Checking in, making sure you're still breathing as you go. Especially if it's getting to feel really intense. If it's feeling really intense, you can try to bring your focus to your breath. Counting your inhales, nice slow inhales for a count of 4. And then a slow exhale for a count of 6. And we'll get our quads from the other angle. So we're gonna let our leg rotate to the outside. So toes pointing away from your midline, getting more of the inside edge, the top of your thigh. Still not going for like total inner thigh, kind of somewhere in between. Still trying to keep that left leg super relaxed. Then we'll get the outside edge of our quads. We'll lift our leg, rotate our toes towards our midline, so it's like we're being pigeon-toed, so we can get the outside edge of the front of our thigh. You're welcome to keep going all the way up into your hip flexors if that is feeling dandy. If you really just want to focus on your quad, you can stop at the top of your thigh. I do a lot of splitty stuff with my legs, so my hip flexors always need love. The more they can get, the better. All right, this will be our last pass over the outside edge of our quads. And then since we are ending with the outside edge, let's actually take it to the outside of our leg into our IT band. So we'll keep doing that left leg. This time I'm gonna lean sideways on my roller. I'm gonna have my left leg relaxed. Right foot can be planted either in front or behind that leg, whatever's feeling good. And we're gonna be trying to roll from the outside of our knee all the way up our hip, up into kind of the part of your hip where it's maybe curving in on your body, but going up to the top of our hip bone. If this feels really, really intense, if you have a very tight IT band, and this gives you all sorts of feels, push into your hands, push into that supporting foot. That's gonna keep more weight in all of your other limbs, less weight in that left foot or left leg, smushing down into your roller. So this is one you can really control how intense or slightly less intense it feels. So rolling all the way up from the outside of our hip bone, down the outsides of our glutes, going down the outside of that thigh, into our IT band, and then stopping just shy of the knee. And we're gonna go back the way we came, nice and slow. And if you have a very tight IT band, this may feel good, but the best way to make it less tight over time is doing more glute stretching. So foam rolling is not the solution for that, but it still does feel nice. But things like your pigeon stretch or your figure four stretch, all of that would help. All right, we'll do one more roll over the outside of this leg, nice and controlled. And then we'll switch legs. So we're outside of that right leg, starting with the roller. All the way up the top of our hip, settling in the side of our hip. Right leg's gonna extend away, and I'm gonna start to roll over the outside of that leg. Stopping before you get to your knee. Keeping that leg as relaxed as you can. And you're welcome to do this on your hands. You can do it on your elbows. Awkward army crawl. Honestly, it does not matter what it looks like, as long as you're feeling that massage. Maybe intense sports massage in the outside of your right leg. That's what I tell myself on the days where foam rolling feels real intense. This is like a massage that people pay for, but you get to do it to yourself for free. All right, one more pass on our right leg. Keeping it slow. And double checking that you're still breathing. And then we're gonna move to the back of our legs, to our hamstrings. So we already did top of our hips, our glutes. We're gonna take it a little bit lower. And for our hamstrings, it's helpful to remember that your hamstrings connect to your shin bone. Do not remember the proper term for it, but below your knee, all the way up the back of your thigh. And they connect to your sits bones, the little bony part that sticks out at the bottom of your pelvis. And I just say that to explain, we want to be rolling all the way down into our knee crease, and make sure you're coming all the way down, going over where your sits bones are sticking out at the top. So we don't want to start our roller short of our butt. They're going to go about halfway up your butt to make sure that we're rolling over the whole hamstring and not just doing like half of the muscle. So we'll start right leg, back of our right thigh on the roller, left foot can just be chilling out on the floor. And I'm gonna start with my thigh up towards the ceiling. So my leg's gonna be in a neutral position, rolling all the way up to the middle of my butt, so going past those sits bones, then all the way down to the back of my knee crease. If you ever want this to be more intense, you can take your left leg, cross it on top of your right leg to add a little bit more body weight. This is feeling pretty intense. That left foot can stay on the floor. And just like we did with our quads and our hip flexors, hamstrings are a fun muscle to get from a couple different angles. So we'll externally rotate our leg. That's gonna mean reaching our toes towards the outside like we're kicking a soccer ball. So knee, thigh, toes, kind of reaching towards the outside. Does not have to be all the way sideways, as long as it's just a little bit of a tilt. Then we'll get over the outside edge of our hamstrings. Just a couple of times. Good. So right leg staying totally relaxed. Depending if you're not wearing socks or you're on a yoga mat, or maybe you're wearing shoes at the gym, your knee might bend, that's totally fine. Really just doing something where you're still going over that hamstring muscle, keeping that leg relaxed. So that might mean just being a little floppy in that leg. You might look goofy. Totally fine. And we'll get the inside edge of our hamstrings. So for this one, we're gonna take our leg, slightly rotate it towards the middle. So toes are starting to angle towards your midline. And I'm gonna relax that leg. Foot's chilling out on the floor. Now I'm rolling over the inside edge, the back of my leg. And we'll just do 2 more passes on the right leg, then switch sides. And this can be the last one. Can give it a little shake out if it needs it. And we'll do our left leg. So starting in our neutral position, so thigh and knee and toes are generally pointing up towards the ceiling, but leg is relaxed, so you don't have to overthink it. Coming all the way, halfway up your butt, making sure you feel that roller go over your sits bones, and then taking that roller all the way down the back of your thigh to the back of your knee. Keeping it nice and slow. Optional, crossing that right leg on top of the left if you want a little bit more body weight pushing down. And remembering, if at any point you feel like, ah man, this is real tight, I feel a little something by my knee, or I feel a little something up where my hamstrings connect with my butt, you're just gonna hang out, breathe, maybe even wanna take a little wiggle side to side, just shift your weight around a little bit. And then when you're ready, slowly inch your way back into your nice controlled rolling. So let's go ahead and externally rotate this leg. So we're gonna reach toes towards the outside, getting the outside edge of our hamstrings. Still trying to go all the way up, about halfway up the butt. And we're gonna internally rotate our legs, so toes and shin and knee and thighs are starting to rotate in the general direction of your midline. Usually this is a smaller range of motion, so it's not gonna be super dramatic. Just starting to bring like pinky toe to the ceiling. This is a nice way to think about this. So now we're getting the inside edge of those hamstrings on the roller. And we'll do 3 nice slow passes up and down. All the way up in your butt. Down the length of your hamstring to the back of your knee. Keep it slow. And last one. All right, then we'll move on to our inner thighs. Also something, if you were a person with some junk, be conscious of where it is. You may have to shift it out of the way. So for our inner thighs, you really want to be able to take the roller as close into your groin as you can, because all of our adductors come all the way in towards our pubic bone, right in the middle here. And we're going to come down just shy of the knee. So this one we won't be rolling over the inside of the knee. We're going to stop right on the top. So you're going to come down. One leg is going to be doing kind of like a Frogger stretch. Other leg can honestly be doing whatever you want. I usually keep it kind of relaxed and extend it out to the side. Almost like you're doing a pigeon pose with your leg on the side. If that feels really intense, if that feels like a huge stretch, you can take that right knee and slide it a little farther down. More like you're doing a cobra, but we're rolling over the inside of our leg. So what that would look like if the wall is the floor. Option number 1, you're doing your Frogger, rolling in and out. Gosh, this is awkward against the wall. Option number 2, you're taking that knee down, so foot's a little closer to the other foot on the floor. It's gonna be a little bit less of an intense stretch. but you're still going over your inner thigh. So either version, aiming for your adductors, the V bits, the inside of your leg, going nice and slow, rolling as close as you can in towards your groin, and then out back, towards your knee. Maybe on your elbows, maybe on your hands, whatever feels better. And we'll just do a couple more passes here, because I did a lot of talking. Making sure you're breathing. This next one will be the last one on the right leg. And we'll move to our left leg. So left leg can either come all the way out, like you're doing your frogger stretch, or maybe it reaches back a little bit, as long as you still got that roller on your inner thigh. Get it in your awkward humpy roll. This is probably the only one that I feel weird doing in public in a gym, just because it looks a little humpy. But it feels great, especially if you've just done like a lot of squats or done middle split work. It's gonna feel real nice. So you just gotta get over it. It's fine. No one cares. All right, 2 more passes slowly on this left leg, so don't rush it. And then come on out. So we've just done kind of the top of our hips, the upper part of our leg from a bunch of different angles. Let's move down to shins and calf and ankles and foot and all that good stuff. We're gonna do calves together today, but if you'd ever like more of an isolation exercise, you're welcome to do one leg at a time, using the other leg to press into it for support. But today, we're gonna do both feet at the same time. So I'm gonna lay back of my calves on the roller, shins, and if I was flexing my feet, my toes would point up to the ceiling. I'm gonna let my feet relax, just hanging out nice and floppy. And I'm gonna roll the roller all the way to the back of my knees, and then down the middle of my calves, stopping at my ankles. And your feet might stay floating in the air, you might let them drag on the ground, whatever feels more comfortable. We want them to stay relaxed. And if this feels like a lot of body weight in your hands and shoulders, you can totally do one leg at a time. It's a little bit easier. Then we're gonna let our toes rotate towards the outside. So we're gonna externally rotate our legs, thighs, knees, shin, toes reaching towards the outside so we can roll over the outside edge of our calf. Being gentle, this is more of a bony part than a muscly part. And we want to make sure we're trying to roll over the muscles and not the bones, so don't stick your feet all the way out to the sides. Still want to be aiming for the muscly bits. Then we'll do the opposite. We're going to internally rotate. So toes kind of pointing towards each other, thighs and shins pointing towards each other. It's going to be a little more comfortable having your feet a little farther apart, but you're welcome to bring your toes into touch if that feels okay in your legs. So now we're rolling over the inside edge of our calf. So this is where the real muscly bits are, so usually this feels a little more intense. And if this feels uncomfortable in your hips, if internal rotation is a hard thing for your legs, because we do have a pretty narrow stance here, go ahead, do one leg at a time. But if your hips are cool, hanging out with your funny pigeon toes, you can save some time, roll up both your calves together. Oh man, this feels real nice if you are a runner. I don't run as much as I used to. I used to do cross country and used to love running. Now when I do it, I am just real sore, like immediately after, especially in my calves because I run on my toes. So I sorely need this. All right, we'll do one more pass through our calves, keeping it slow. All the way up and all the way down. Then we'll move on to our shins. So for our shins, we're just gonna be aiming for this outside muscle. We've got kind of our shin bone running down the middle of our shin. So we're gonna be angling for this guy that's right here. To do that, to make sure we're getting the muscle kind of the outside edge of the front of our leg, that means we're gonna have to take toes together a little bit pigeon-toed, and you can either do this both legs at once, if that is comfortable. If that is not comfortable in your ankle or in your hips, you can do one leg at a time. So where we're taking our roller, it's about here. So doing that on the floor, I've got to have my foot slightly turned in instead of just jamming my shin bone into the roller. So if you're just doing one leg at a time, go ahead, switch legs. If you're doing both legs at once, you can keep on going about halfway through. Keeping it slow. And just one more. Then you can come up to standing. We'll do our feet, which is one of my favorite things to foam roll, because I didn't learn this until much later in life. It's like a very cheap way to give yourself a foot massage. So we're gonna start, roll on the floor. I'm gonna take my right foot, plant it on the top of my roller. I'm gonna put a little bit of body weight in the foot. You don't have to stand all of your body weight, just enough for a little pressure. And roll it forwards and backwards. And depending on what kind of roller you have, especially if you got like a nubby one, this might feel real good. If it's a smooth one like this, it might not feel like a lot, because it might be really fitting the bottom of your foot. But either way, it's a nice stretch for your ankle. You might even be getting a little stretch for your calf as you're rolling. If your roller is smooth and on the softer side, go ahead and take your foot, angling it towards the outside edge of your foot on the roller, so the blade edge of your foot. And roll the outside edge of your roller. This can feel real nice, as long as you don't have a super stiff roller. If this does not feel delightful, go back to doing the bottom of your foot. But generally, the squishier rollers, this can feel good. Then we'll switch to the arch of our foot. So I'm gonna angle the blade edge of my foot up towards the ceiling a little bit more. Or if this feels wonky on your ankle, you can keep doing just regular forwards and back over that ankle. Good. Last one we're gonna do, come back to foot evenly placed on the roller so we're not flipping either side of our foot. And I want you to think about lifting your toes, spreading them out nice and wide, and then gargoyle curling them down. So we're gonna lift and spread, gargoyle coil down. Couple more times. And 3, spread them nice and wide, curl down. 2, and 1. Good. Then you can come off, release, give it a shake. We'll do left foot. So starting bottom of our left foot on the roller, taking it forwards and backwards a couple of times. And if you want to hold a calf stretch, you're welcome to keep reaching that heel towards the floor, lean your torso forwards, whatever feels good. And keep going forwards and backwards if you've got a really stiff roller, or if it's got a lot of texture on it. If you've got a nice, smooth, sort of squishy one like this, go ahead, do the outside edge of your foot, so that the blade edge of your foot is on the roller. Giving it a nice little massage. And then if it's comfortable on your ankle, we'll do arch of our foot. So a little more pressure directly into that arch. And then last one, foot back to neutral on the roller, leaning into it a little bit. So there's some weight pushing down through the arch in the center of your foot. We're gonna lift, spread our toes nice and wide, and gargoyle curl them down so toes are curling as much as they can. Lift and spread, curl them down, lift and spread, curl them down 2 more times, lifting those toes, spread them nice and wide, and curl, last lift, curl, and shake it on out. And hopefully you're feeling nice and limber and mobile and either ready to go do stuff or ready to continue relaxing. Have a wonderful rest of your day.